And let it go. Okay, now if I see you guys sleeping again, if I see you sleeping while I'm talking, I'll have you stand up and do this again. Thanks, you can have a seat. I'm just kidding. Hopefully I won't bore you too much. The next thing we need, I said we need first to stand. The next thing we need is a motto for tonight, okay? So I want everybody to repeat after this, because this is one thing I want everybody to remember when they go home tonight, okay? Ready? Never outrun your fork. Sorry, I missed the York. Can we try that again? So I can hear it. Ready? Never outrun your fork. So we're going to go into that in quite a bit more detail. But first, I want to thank every single one of you for coming out here tonight. You know, I've been helping at this office off and on for like the last 4 years. And I've loved helping Dr. Mike and his patients, and I'm so excited that it was about 6 weeks ago, I think, is that right? No. Okay, about 6 weeks ago that I started building my own practice within this office. You're all, if you're seeing Dr. Mike, you're going to stay with Dr. Mike, and if you're seeing me, you'll stay with me. But it's a real privilege to be here, and I love getting to do these kinds of talks, and one of the reasons why, especially for me, is because I'm a food addict, and I'll gladly confess that. Every single day I wake up, I struggle with food. I've struggled my entire lifetime. And so if there's anybody here that can tell you that they know what the struggle is like with food, it's me. And I used to hate going to these seminars where these people stood up and they had these perfect washboard abs, and they never struggled with food a day in their life, and they would tell me how I should eat and how I should be. And I would always get frustrated because I'm like, you don't know my story. And I can promise you, anybody who raise your hand if you struggle with food ever. Okay, so almost everybody here. I can so relate to you. So I just want to talk and let you know more about my story here in just a minute. We're going to talk about some lies that we've been told, things that I followed that I struggled with for so many years that I never could understand why I was so overweight. And I know I'm not perfect now. I do fluctuate. Everybody does. But you know, when I fluctuate now, my weight goes up a little and comes back down and goes up a little. My fluctuations used to be like 30, 40 pound fluctuations. And I absolutely hated it. Yeah, I can see some people relating. Anyway, it doesn't have to be that way. Life does not have to be that way. Everybody does fluctuate naturally, but we don't have to do so to the tune of 20 or 30 pounds. So I'm going to show you tonight some lies that are very commonly told by a lot of industries that have a lot of money that really want us to eat their kinds of food that are really lousy. And I'm going to show you some alternatives instead. All right? Let's do the motto again. Ready? Never outrun your fork. Thank you. All right, so much of what we have been... does this pyramid look familiar to anybody? Okay, the food pyramid. Now, I want you to know it changed, I think it was in 2012, it changed to a thing called myplate.gov. It's really not much better. It's lousy, and you know, I used to think, and I'd hear people talking about this, and they would be hammering it all day long about how lousy this is. But the reality is, these weren't made by scientists that understand health. This pyramid was made by industries that have a lot of money to lose if you stop consuming their products. And again, this was made, it was dealt with money, and I don't want to get too cynical and too angry about it. The reality is, though, it's not very healthy for our bodies. And when we put these types of food into our bodies, we're going to end up being overweight, among a lot of other health problems. So that said, how many have ever tried a low-fat diet? How many have tried a low-fat diet and failed at a low-fat diet? How many are sick of low-fat diets? I'm saying, you know what, thank you. You know what, eating like the whole cardboard thing, like you can eat lettuce and a piece of cardboard? Tonight I'm going to show you ways that you can have brownies and cookies and good healthy foods all day long and really enjoy them. And I'm going to show you how to do it in a low carb way and a very whole foods way. How many, by the way, have ever tried a low carb diet? So you think, and this was a problem I had for many years. I thought low-carb diet meant eating hunks of cheese, big blocks of cheese, with nothing but bacon to go with it and hot dogs. And I want you to know there's nothing farther from the truth. So when you eat naturally, you're going to reduce your carbs in a natural fashion. So I'm not here to try to tout Atkins to you or any other big commercial diet, except just how healthy eating leads to health. So that said, you know, how many, by the way, have ever tried, you know, you try an unsustainable cleanse. How many have tried a cleanse, done well at it, or maybe you didn't do so well, and then after you get off the cleanse, 2 weeks later, you've put on all the weight? Has anybody done that? Hands? Can I see? Are you the only one that, okay, I'm seeing a couple other hands go up. Okay. You know, and this was what was a challenge. I used to do these cleanses with my wife, and we would do great, and I swear you'd get these little Scooby snacks, we call them Scooby snacks, and you could drink a little bit of a shake, and I was hungry like all the time, but I would lose the weight. And they were like 7 or 9 days, I forget, but I would lose like 8 pounds, and I would feel great toward the end of them. But the problem is, I didn't know how to eat. And so as soon as I get off the cleanse, I'd be like, well, let's try to eat healthy, and we'd be going eating junk, stuff that makes us fat, and thinking we were eating healthy, and then it would start all over again. And I'm so sick of that. And I don't want anybody to have to go through that. If I can share a few things tonight to help you, I'm so happy to be able to do it. So, a little about me. That was when I was doing my cleanses. I was about 40 pounds heavier. I was miserable, and I would hate it. And this was my wife and myself. That was my little piece of, I think that was like a birthday tiramisu. And I was miserable. Every morning I would wake up, I felt like I got run over by a truck. And again, like I said, I fully acknowledge them, not Mr. Perfect Washboard Abs right this minute, but compared to how I felt here, I really feel a lot of happiness that I'm doing well for myself. I love being able to share with other people the secrets I've learned. You know, just like we talked about a few minutes ago, a lot of people will try to decrease their carbs or they decrease their fat, and what happens is they start eating not real food. So if there's anything I can help with, it's helping people eat real food. What are some of the fads that are out there right now, dietary fads that you've heard of? Anybody?
Green tea.
Green tea, okay.
Arsenio.
Okay.
Raspberry ketones.
Okay, and so tell me a little, because I know Dr. Oz. By the way, anybody like Dr. Oz or follow Dr. Oz? Now I got to say this. I like that a lot of what Dr. Oz says is kind of different than what most other doctors are saying. Chiropractors say things that are different than what most other doctors are saying, but where it stops is when things stop being supported by science. I really hope that we stop talking about them. That's the problem with Dr. Oz, is he's using the word miracle in his in the products that he's talking about. And I think it was the green, what was it, the raspberry ketones.
Raspberry ketones, the Arsenio, something, Bill or something, I can't remember how to pronounce it.
Okay. So,
Lipozine. I'm trying to think of all the different ones that are sitting on the counter at home. That's
I'm with you, and I've been there.
I can see them sitting there.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. You know, I remember I was taking, I forget what kind of, it was a stimulant like 20 years ago when I was in chiropractic school. And I was taking it trying to lose weight, and I remember going to bed and feeling like my heart was literally going to jump out of my chest. And it was something like fen-phen, I forget what it was, and I know that, yeah, tell me about it. Anyway, and if there's a pill out there to try, guess who's tried it? I have. And you know, the problem with these, again, is that we take these things that are supposed to speed up our metabolism, that are supposed to bring us health from the outside in. And the problem is we're not giving our body the basic building blocks it needs to stay healthy. So we want to try to help you. Just understand the things. When your body has the nutrition it needs to stay healthy, it usually doesn't need a whole lot of other stuff. Does that make sense? Okay. So that said, this was, anybody do CrossFit ever, or try CrossFit or hear of CrossFit? I know we get made fun of a lot, but we're like the Kool-Aid drinkers of the exercisers. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. This was, and that was actually like a year and a half ago, but I got to do a competition, which was a lot of fun, and I loved it. And I don't know, you work hard, and if you're into throwing up in front of all your friends, it can be a lot of fun. But anyway, it's something I like doing. You know, I contribute on the internet. I've published to a lot of other blogs. There's been over 50 different blogs I've gotten to publish to. And I enjoy interacting. I'm kind of a computer geek that way. I really like going back and forth between the people that are really up on the research. So I just get to hear a lot of both what the buzz is about the latest fads, but also what science continues to report as being healthy. So I really enjoy getting to help others just in sharing what we want to talk about. So the next thing, we're going to get onto a secret, but before we start talking about any secrets, what's the title of this workshop again? All right, so that's going to be our assignment. Now, I will jump in with this if you guys will, because I have 5 pounds to lose. You know, let's just think realistically right now. Today is what day? Monday? Okay, so we have, tomorrow's Tuesday. Nobody's going to get up tomorrow morning and do all their grocery shopping tonight before they go home. So let's get into what would be realistic. I'm thinking that if we go a week out from tomorrow, now it becomes Christmas, and I know our culture is eat a lot of food at that time. But I'm thinking here, this looks good to me. There's Wednesday the 17th through the 23rd, which would be day after tomorrow through Tuesday. How many of you think, and just be realistic, if you don't think you could commit to doing that, that's fine with me. I'm just trying to help keep us accountable. Do you think this is possible? You could do this, the 17th through the 23rd, take home some tips and implement them? How many think they can? How many think they're likely to? How many think they're not likely to? Anyone? Be honest. Anyone? Okay. We've either got some extremely dedicated people here tonight or some people that are fibbing a little. But I want you then, will you do this then on your little notepad since everybody committed to this? I want you to plan that Wednesday you're going to implement a few of these ideas, okay? Starting Wednesday. I hear all the paper shuffling now and everything. All right, you didn't know you were going to get homework tonight, did you? All right, so that said, let's get on to the first secret, okay? The first secret we want to talk about on losing 5 pounds is stop thinking you have to do hours of cardio. How many still think, and I thought this until just a couple years ago, how many still think you got to do a lot of cardio or a lot of heavy running or to lose a lot of weight? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of hands go up. I'm going to show you, just mathematically, how nothing can be farther from the truth. Now, how many of you, how long do you think you need to exercise in a week in order to be healthy? How long do you think you should have set aside, both for actual specific time where you're exercising and then time where you're actually preparing to exercise? How long do you think? And how long? 2 hours? So you're saying about 2 hours a week? Okay. Who else? Anybody? How long?
I was thinking like a day should try about 30 minutes, a couple of days.
Okay, so we got there a couple days. So you're saying how long?
I guess about 30 minutes, about 3 or 4 days a week.
Okay, 30 minutes, 3 or 4 days a week. Okay, so the hour and a half, 2 hours. So I'm hearing a couple of people saying 2 hours. What if I told you that you could get all the exercise that you absolutely need in under 15 minutes of complete exercise for the entire week? No, I'm sorry, let's change that. 20 minutes of complete exercise for the week and about 1 hour of exercise time. Would you believe me? I don't expect anybody to. You can do it.
1 hour per week?
1 hour per week. You can get in great shape in less than an hour per week. And I'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes, okay? It's buying Dr. Mike's new treadmill that came out. I'm just kidding. Okay, before I talk about that, let's talk about problems with chronic cardio. We call it chronic cardio because it leads to a lot of problems. It creates free radicals in your body. And I don't know, have anybody ever, I'm sure Dr. Oz talked about free radicals right before he was trying to sell one of his supplements. Anyway, free radicals go in your body, and what they do is they tear holes all through your body. And basically, it's oxygen that's missing an electron. And how free radical, has anybody heard of free radicals? Okay, so you've heard bad things about them. Okay, what they do, think of free radicals as like little bullets shooting through your body. And what these do is, especially in your cardiovascular system, they shoot little holes in your blood vessels. And I mean tiny, beyond microscopic holes. These holes then lead to inflammation. You get a lot of arterial plaque. And over time, it leads to a lot of heart problems. There was actually a study that was done by Harvard that said that people that do like a lot of marathons, they typically are very, very skinny and they don't have much muscle. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay. People that run, if you look at people that run like the 100 or 200 meters, look at, he was in the Summer Olympics, Usain Bolt. Do you know what the short sprinters look like? They have phenomenal body builds. They just sprint for short periods, very short bursts. Now contrast that with people that run marathons all the time. Do you start to see the difference? Okay, we're going to come back to that in a minute. The long and short is, when you have a lot of long bouts of cardio, it's not good for your body. And it's not good for your heart. And ultimately, it contribute to us being fat. So we want to avoid that. So let's talk about outrunning your fork. That's our little motto for today. Here's what we want to talk with just a little bit of math. Let's say you're a woman, and let's say you want to lose 2 pounds per week. That sounds pretty reasonable, right? Okay, here's the problem with people that have anybody ever heard that you can eat whatever you want as long as you exercise? Has anybody ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody, have you tried that and failed at it? Okay. Here's why. Let's take a Krispy Kreme. So, I can just go exercise it off. A Krispy Kreme is about 400 calories, all right? So, let me get out my pen here. Well, we got it all here. So think of a Krispy Kreme is about 400 calories. How many calories does a typical person need in a day, by the way? About 1,500 to 2,000. Does that sound about right to everybody? Okay, so think about a Krispy Kreme donut. That's like, what, a fourth or a fifth of your total calories for the day. But again, I can just burn it off. So we've got a Krispy Kreme, it's 400 calories. 1 pound of fat equals about 3,500 calories. Now, if we take this, an average woman burns about 700 calories an hour running. And she says, well, I want to lose 2 pounds a week, and I just want to have a Krispy Kreme a day just because I'm running all my weight. In order to burn just 2 pounds of fat while eating the Krispy Kreme, she's got to burn off the equivalent of the Krispy Kreme, which is 400 calories times 7 days equals 2,800 calories. Okay? Then, she's also got to burn off the extra fat on top of that, which is 3,500 calories times 2 equals 7,000 calories. You add those two together, this plus this, she's got to burn off 9,800 calories, which equals about 14 hours of running per week. Who wants to do 14 hours of running per week? Not me.
One donut?
See, 1 donut and lose your 2 pounds a day. Or I'm sorry, a week. Okay, there's a simpler way to do it. And if we eat the right foods in the right proportion that we're supposed to, we can do it. So, that said, the first secret and the way to exercise is by doing high intensity training. And I'm going to have, there's our model here in just a minute.
Oh, how convenient.
I mentioned the word exercise to him a little earlier, and he's like, I can come out there, I'll do whatever you want.
Let's do it.
I'd love to show you this, but I know that I'm going to be so out of breath doing it that I won't be able to talk, so that's why I asked him to come. Does anybody else feel adventurous today and feel like doing a little exercise bit? Okay. So we're going to show you high-intensity training. Now, how high-intensity training works, you have just a few minutes, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Like 5? Okay. Yeah. How high-intensity training works is it kicks up our human growth hormones. Human growth hormone helps us burn fat faster to a small, modest degree. But one of the things human growth hormone also does is shuts off our hunger mechanism. So it stops making us so darn hungry. Again, what was our motto? Never you can never, okay, you know what it is. Never outrun your fork. Yeah, well, the same way, you're not going to be able to high-intensity training outrun your fork either. But you can kick up your metabolism a little, and you can decrease your cravings for food. All right? Remember how I showed you that you can get a great workout in less than 30 minutes of total exercise per week? That's what I'm going to show you here with Ryan. No, Ryan's going to show you. Here's how it works. You do 20 seconds of very, very high-intensity activity. Then you do 20 seconds off of rest, then another 20 seconds of high activity, and another 20 seconds of rest, followed by 20 seconds more. You with me? That's your first round. Everybody see that? Now, then you get a 2-minute rest, so everybody see the 2 minutes there? Then you go do another set of this, and then you get another 2 minutes of rest, and then one more set, and then you're done. That's your workout for the entire day. Now I'm going to show you, I know everybody's like, this isn't very much. Ryan is just going to do one of these. He's not going to do an entire workout, okay? So I want you to just watch him, and he's going to do, since he's advanced, he's going to do 30 seconds, okay? And everybody's going to do, he's going to do 3 sets, he'll do 3 sets of 30 seconds. So it'll be 30, rest 30 seconds, 30, rest 30 seconds, 30, rest 30 seconds, okay? Ready?
Burpees?
Burpees. He's going to do burpees. You can do any exercise you want, but he's going to do burpees, okay? Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So here's the timer. Good. All the way down, Ryan.
I didn't catch that.
That isn't going to happen.
Okay.
This is the more advanced version.
Yeah, this is the more advanced version.
You can hold your breath for the really advanced version. No, no.
Ryan, by the way, is an exercise nut, and he was a CrossFit instructor. And, yeah. Okay, we got 6 seconds to go. Okay. 3, 2, 1, stop. Okay, now he's got 30 seconds rest, so we'll give him 30 seconds. So everybody's watching still? Is he a little out of breath? Yeah. Do you think he's getting some good cardiovascular exercise right now? Do you think he's getting some good muscular exercise right now? Yeah, really, really cool.
And I'm not hungry at all. I'll give you some water.
Okay, so that is his first set of 30 seconds, all right? So he's got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. So here he goes again. He's going to do another 30 seconds of burpees. Now, when you're doing this at home, I couldn't do what he's doing, and I'll just be up front. But you can do whatever you want. For some people, just deep squats will work. They can do these. Other people, you can do push-ups. Really, anytime you're using big muscle groups, you can just sprint or walk as fast as you can. Anything where you're moving. 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. Okay? So now he's got another 30 seconds. We're not done yet. Okay, so again, we're still here. And so how far along are we? Okay, he's got 20 seconds of rest still, and he's going to get to do another 30 seconds. And
That should be ample.
First set. Are people starting to believe me that you can get a real workout in the time that we're talking about? Okay. And you still got one more. Will you say
do it.
one more?
I'm all
Okay.
for that growth hormone.
Okay, hold on. 3, 2, 1, start. Okay, he's got 30 more seconds. After this, I hope we'll all give him a big round of applause, too. He's a trooper. Okay. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. Good job, Ryan. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Good job. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Anytime. How about tomorrow?
Yeah, let's do that. As long as it's not in 30 seconds. See you, everybody.
See you later, Ryan. Okay. Now, if Ryan were doing this at home, he'd be resting for 2 minutes. Okay? And then he would do that again. And then he'd get to rest for 2 more minutes. And then he'd do that a third time. You know, all that entire workout he would do is done in 9 minutes. So if you do 9 minutes times, this is the advanced version, is 9 minutes long. Let's say you want to do that 3 times a week. That's 27 minutes of complete all exercise, 27 minutes of everything. And only the amount of time you're exercising is actually it. I think you're only exercising, of that 27 minutes, you're actually doing like 15 minutes of exercise. Guys, this stuff is really cool. And there's so much research that's going on about it right now. And the research is showing that you can do that and increase your oxygen carrying capacity in your body far more than jogging will ever do. And again, the big thing about this, I like it because it does help you burn fat faster, but again, if you're going to eat Krispy Kremes all day, it's not going to do much. So how do you help avoid those cravings? By kicking up that human growth hormone, and one of the consequences of that is you stop feeling hungry so much. So there's like a million other different ways that human growth hormone helps you, and it helps you fight stress. So you know what it's like when you're stressed, you're angry, and the only thing that's going to save the world from falling apart is a Krispy Kreme. I know because I've been there. That does it. And so the purpose, again, is not just burning off calories, because the work that he did, believe it or not, it doesn't burn off tons of calories. But what it does is he's not going to be as hungry the rest of the day. Okay? That was awesome, by the way. He was a trooper. Wow. All right, so that is, that's how we do surge training. Does anybody, or high intensity training, does anybody have any questions about this so far? Any questions about that or anything we've covered so far? Yes?
If you do it, let's say you do it multiple times during the day, would that only help you? If you did it like do that exact exercise 2 or 3 times a day?
You know,
like early in the morning and then late afternoon, something like that.
You know, you want to really shock your system when you do it. And the risk, if you're doing it more than once a day, the risk you run is that you start doing it lower intensity. And then what happens is now it's more of a jog for you. And you want to shock your system and really crank out those growth hormones. So I would personally recommend against it. And I've heard even people, different doctors say that you should do it no more than 3 times a week. I think that's their own personal preference, because I think you could do it up to 5 or 6 times if you felt like it. But I don't think you would want to do twice a day. Answer your question? Okay. And you know, and maybe we'll save questions for afterwards, but I think you had raised your hand too.
I guess what I was saying, like you have just the 3 sessions, so you only do 3.
Yep. 3 rounds of 3. Now, if you want to and you feel really advanced, you can add more, but I mean, take a look. He's a seasoned athlete, and I'm thinking, like, for myself, just watching him, you know, I was tired watching him. Yeah. But the way that you can do it, if you want to at home, you know, burpees are the most advanced exercises, body calisthenic exercises you can do. But if you want to at home, one thing you can do are these, and that's like semi-advanced. Another is if you want to just do deep squats, that's like a moderate one. Another is if you can't do that, if you want to walk, you can, or run, if you're able to run, you can do that. If you want to walk fast, you're able to do that. And if you want to, if you're only able to swim, you can go in a swimming pool and do the exact same thing. The cool part is, I mean, whether you're an Olympic athlete or whether you're a couch potato, you can do these exercises no matter where you're at. Okay? And I will leave time when we get done tonight so I can answer any questions. Please write them down, though, so you can remember to ask them to me as we go on. So that is high-intensity training. The next thing, oh, there we were talking about sprints and 9 minutes total. Yeah, so anyway, cool stuff. The next thing is drastically reducing sugar. So this is secret number 2, drastically reducing sugar and the surprising things that turn into sugar. I remember, especially when I was in chiropractic school, we get taught in chiropractic school the same junk that medical doctors are taught about nutrition, which is the food pyramid, and eat a low-fat diet, plenty of whole grains, and avoid saturated fats. Those were the things that I was taught in chiropractic school, and I tried for many, many years to avoid or to follow suit, and it was miserable for me. Here's the deal. Sugar spikes, it gives us a blood sugar rush. And what that in turn does is spikes our blood sugar in our body. Our body doesn't like having a lot of sugar in our bloodstream, okay? Sugar is a toxin to our brain. And anybody that is diabetic or knows somebody that's diabetic, you know they're always monitoring their sugar. You know that? The reason is because if it goes over a certain amount, they're worried because it's toxic to our brain. Much the same way that alcohol is toxic to our brain, sugar is also toxic. So they're constantly pricking themselves to make sure, and the ideal range is between 80 and 120. They don't want to go over that number. So the problem is, when we eat these, let me ask you this. How many of you think there's a difference between whole grain and white bread? Ooh, we've got a good room. There really isn't much difference at all. And in fact, there's been studies that have been done, and I'll show you more on wheat in just a minute. First of all, can everybody relate that sugar is bad in your bloodstream? Everybody can agree to that? Okay. There's different studies that are out there that measure the amounts that different foods cause our body to produce insulin to get our sugar out of our blood, and how much these foods crank up our blood sugar. In other words, certain foods, like if you eat a piece of wheat, it's not going to do anything to your blood sugar. If you eat salad, it's not going to do much to your blood sugar. If you eat olive oil, it's not going to do much to your blood sugar. But if you eat, if you start eating rice, it's going to do things to your blood sugar. And if you eat wheat, it will increase your blood sugar. So there's different levels based on what we have, like, and what they always gauge it by is if you consume a teaspoon of sugar. Wheat bread cranks up your blood sugar levels more than consuming a teaspoon of sugar in the same quantity. Can everybody, did you hear that right? Okay. When you eat wheat bread in the same quantity that you eat table sugar, it tends to boost up your blood sugar levels more than eating the comparable quality of table sugar. And it doesn't matter if it's white bread or whole wheat. This was one of those things that I hated when I was in chiropractic school, is just trying to get on with this. And here I was having my Nutri-Grain bars, and I was drinking my coffee in the morning, and I had a lot of coffee because I get all cranked up on that plus sugar. And I would go like this, and then I would crash later. And does anybody know what that energy spike and crash is like? When we do that to our blood sugar, that's what will happen. So, what we want to do is ultimately cause our blood sugar levels to be very, very stable. It's funny, when people become diabetic, the doctors start saying, hey, you need to avoid bread, and you need to avoid sugar, and you need to avoid all these sugary foods. My question is why don't we avoid those things before we're diabetic? And why don't we learn to replace some things with healthy substitutions instead? And I can only imagine that right now in some of your heads you're thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to tell us that all we can eat is meat and cheese. And I promise you that won't be the case, okay? So let's talk about, first thing, this is a really cool thing, erythritol and stevia. Have any of you ever heard of these? Erythritol is a natural sugar alcohol. Stevia is an herb. Stevia has been used for, I think, over 1,000 years. It's of all the of all the ways to sweeten a food, this is one of the best ways possible, okay? Doesn't mean it's a health food. I haven't seen that stevia is indeed a health food, but compared to Splenda, which is an artificial man-made chemical, and compared to NutraSweet, and compared to Equal, and I think there are saccharin. Anyway, stevia is a natural herb, and compared to those other things, it like blows it out of the water as far as not being toxic. So the other things are basically toxins for your body. If you want to sweeten food, you can sweeten it with stevia. It's a wonderful herb. Has anybody, who's used stevia? Oh, cool. So you've used it. Who's never heard of stevia? Anybody? Okay, so you've never heard of stevia? Okay, they sell it at health food stores. Generally, it's pretty easy to get, and it's a great sweetener. Oh, yeah, it is next door, Red Bar. Everybody, yeah, if you want to get some stevia, go there. Thanks for a plug. All right. So anyway, oh, by the way, sugar. They do MRI scans now, and this is why sugar is so hard to get off of. Is because it's very addictive. And there's research that's coming out there right now that's comparing it to cocaine as far as addiction levels go. And it scares me to think that sugar has that much of a grasp, but I know because I was addicted to sugar myself, and I tried to avoid it like the plague. And so I have a lot of sensitivity to carbohydrates, and I have a feeling that other people, I'm seeing heads nod, you know what I'm talking about. Sugar, especially after like 2 days, trying to get off of it, it can be really, really rough. So anyway, talking about wheat. Here's the problem with wheat. I know I'm slamming wheat. Before I get slamming wheat too much, I want to give you two great alternatives for flour. Coconut flour and almond flour. Has anybody ever heard of these? Okay, who's heard of coconut or almond flour? Who hasn't heard of coconut or almond flour? Okay, so a couple people. If you have never cooked with coconut flour or baked with it or almond flour, you can bake with it the same as white flour. So I love making, I'll make the red lobster biscuits. I love making the red lobster biscuits. I love baking pancakes. I love baking, you know, muffins and rolls and cookies and cakes. You can bake all these things. Now, granted, they will stall your weight loss if you're not careful, but they're nowhere nearly as damaging as wheat. Now, here's one of the problems we have with wheat. And you're going to love my art, too, by the way. Ready? Look at this. Yeah. Okay, so one of the problems with wheat is this. Hypothyroidism. You've heard of hypothyroidism? What are some of the symptoms of hypothyroidism?
Weight gain.
Yeah, weight gain are one of them. And then we get really cold extremities. There's a whole host of things, very dry skin. Well, what happens is we don't have enough thyroid hormone floating around in our bodies. So you go to your local doctor and they say, well, we're going to give you this synthetic thyroid hormone. You've heard of that? Well, here's a problem. 90% of, or there's been predictions or estimates that about 90% of hypothyroidism in the United States is Hashimoto's thyroidism. Now, why this is interesting to know is if you have thyroidism, or if you know of somebody, or hypothyroidism, or know of somebody that's got it, there is a strong likelihood, a 90% chance that it's Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's doesn't mean that you're not producing enough thyroid hormones. It means you're producing enough thyroid hormones, but your body's attacking it and killing it off before it gets to help do what it's supposed to do. Did everybody follow what I just said? Yeah, that's Hashimoto's. Now, there's a strong connection between the gluten that is in wheat and Hashimoto's, and here is why. We eat the bread and it goes into our stomach, or we eat the wheat products that go into our stomach, and this is the thyroid, by the way, so they go down all the way into our stomach. The problem is these proteins that are in the wheat bread, or wheat in general, tend to leak out of our gut. Has anybody heard of leaky gut syndrome? Okay, they tend to leak out of our gut into our bloodstream. Now, all these proteins are running around our bloodstream, and our body says this is bad. We need to attack this. Our body doesn't like foreign stuff floating around in the bloodstream. This passes through the stomach into our bloodstream. So our body shoots out these antibodies, and these attack. They attack these foreign invaders, or what they perceive as foreign invaders. You with me? The problem is these antibodies also like to attack the thyroid. And hence, we get Hashimoto's. What this leads to is, among other things, is weight gain. And so that's just one of the problems with wheat and one of the problems with gluten. Then on top of it, we've got a whole host of other things that I won't bore you with the details, but there's lectins and saponins, these different types of proteins that you don't want floating around in your body. So, on top of it, like we said, wheat turns into sugar. Can everybody follow or just think that it's possible that you want to possibly try avoiding wheat? Okay, and can everybody agree that if you want to have bread or muffins or baked goods, that it's possible you could try to do it with coconut flour or almond flour? Okay, great, great. So, the next thing then is, let's talk about eating more healthy fats. Now, a lot of times, before I talk about this, Who here still thinks that eating a low-fat diet is healthy? Anybody? You know, it's cool. You know, 10 years ago, almost every hand would go up in the room. And I'm so glad to hear this because it's telling me that we're getting more fat burners and people that understand about what healthy fats are about. Here's the problem. If we're sugar burners, sugar burns very quickly. So we eat sugar, it burns off very quickly, and then our body doesn't know how to burn fat, so it needs more sugar. And our body just never goes after the fat, so we're constantly craving more sugar, and that's part of why we get those sugar cravings. Well, if we become a fat burner, it burns a lot slower and a lot longer of a period of time than sugar. You don't get as many cravings as you do for sugar. It's a really cool feature of fat. Now, most people agree in the room that we should have more healthy fats, but I don't think most people know like how much fat we're talking about. And so for that, let's talk about, and how many of you think that saturated fat can be healthy? Okay, how many of you think that saturated fat is unhealthy? Okay. Really cool study. I want to talk just about a couple of things. First of all, and I want to be really careful where we go with this because these are topics for other discussions, but especially when we get to cholesterol, there is so much research right now that's coming out that's showing the whole war on cholesterol. There's a saying that says, don't blame the butter for the problem that the bread caused. In other words, cholesterol is a powerful antioxidant. It's a wonderful thing that we need in our body. And when we cause inflammation in our body from sugar, from over-exercising, and from toxins, when we create a lot of inflammation, cholesterol rushes in to try to heal that inflammation. Cholesterol, thank God we have it. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. There was recently from the British Medical Journal, there's a higher death rate among people with low cholesterol than with high cholesterol. There are more and more studies that are coming out right now that are showing that people that have high cholesterol are more likely to live a longer, healthier life than people with low cholesterol levels. And I'm only saying this, and you can do the research yourself on cholesterol. There is so much more that keeps coming in from PubMed. But the long and short is cholesterol is a very healthy thing. Now there's certain aspects about it, particularly in the LDL. There's an oxidized form of LDL, and then there's a non-oxidized form of LDL. Most people, when they go to the doctor, they only measure LDL. They don't measure the oxidized versus the non-oxidized levels. It's critical, if you want to be healthy, that you find out what both of those levels are, because LDL itself is not an indicator of how healthy you are or are not. So some people with high LDL levels are much healthier than people that have low LDL levels. So anyway, that's a subject for another talk. I think Dr. Mike is going to be doing, I forget what month, but he's doing a cholesterol talk too. But, okay, has anybody ever heard of the French paradox study? I went down a wormhole, but I'm back. Anybody? Okay, if you go to France, think of, if you go in, they smoke all the time, okay? I'm not recommending anybody here takes up smoking. But they smoke all the time. They eat a lot more butter than Americans do. At least they used to. America is actually catching up, and we're eating more butter now. Butter, is it saturated fat? Yeah, it's almost all saturated fat. There were studies that were done, and the level of saturated fat, they eat about 4 times more butter and 60% more cheese than Americans. At least that was in 1999. Yet they've done studies that have shown that they suffer from far less arterial disease than we do, hence the French paradox. They're like, why are these people smoking so much? And why are they eating so much saturated fat, yet they're living so much longer than Americans? There was something called the 7-country study that took place in the 1950s. Don't write this down, please. By a guy named Ansel Keys, or you can. Anyway, he took 22 different countries. He threw out the rest of them and only kept 7 studies. And his 7 studies made it appear like countries where there's more saturated fat consumption have a correlation with more heart disease. The problem is if you add in the other rest of those 22 countries that he cherry-picked, there's no correlation at all. And in other words, saturated fat's a very healthy part of our diet. One of the best, wonderful ways of saturated fat is coconut oil. I love it. Has anybody here used coconut oil? Okay, it's almost pure saturated fat you're using. Wonderful, wonderful type of fat. How about butter? Anybody use butter? Wonderful. Please, okay, how many use margarine? Please? Thank goodness. Yes. Margarine is not a saturated fat, and that's how they still tout it. Thankfully, I think it was last year, America had the highest rate of butter consumption in like 40 years. So slowly Americans are catching. I think Time Magazine just recently put out a study that said we were wrong. And it said saturated fat's not that bad after all. And there's a big picture of butter being, did anybody see the cover of that Time Magazine? There's a big picture of butter being scooped out. So anyway, the buzz is getting out there, and slowly but surely, by the way, trans fats. Are trans fats good or bad? They're horrible all day long. Please, and trans fats are fats that we make. So they say, what is it? If it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, like a chemical plant, don't eat it. But anyway, saturated fat, or I'm sorry, trans fatty acids are horrible. Well, anyway, going on about fat a little bit. Here's some of the benefits that we have of fat. By the way, there was another study I wanted to tell you about, the Maasai people. Here's how much fat. When we're talking about how much fat can we have, these people, they did studies on them in East African tribe. These people, the males, would eat over 1 pound of fat per day in the form of animal fat, in the form of cream. A pound a day. That's all saturated fat. You with me? They had very little arterial plaquing on autopsies they've done of these people. There's the Maasai study. You can look that up. There's also the Inuit study. There's the Spain study. There's been a lot of studies. There's absolutely nothing new on this regarding fat. Now, if you make margarine and you hear people talking about saturated fat being good, how would you feel right now if you had all your stock in margarine? Would you feel happy, or would you feel not happy? What would you tell people? You would tell people, what would you say about saturated fat if you made margarine and you earned your living off of margarine? Yeah, I'd be saying saturated fat's really bad, right? Okay, margarine makers have a lot to lose right now by the change that's going on in our country, because people are awakening to what fat does.
Is it true that margarine is only like 1 molecule away from plastic in its actual chemical makeup?
You know, I've heard, she asked if it's like 1 molecule away from plastic. I know this, that the actual true color of it is like a clearish, cloudy color, and then they add yellow food dye to it to make it appear so it looks like butter. And it is a type of a petrochemical, but beyond that, I can't say that it's, I don't know if it's 1 molecule away. Okay, but it is, margarine is some nasty, nasty stuff. And it was made, I heard the legend is that it was made, and I can't tell you this for sure, but during World War II, or at least it was popularized during that time because of the butter rations that were going on. And so they wanted to help provide for people. So anyway, here we go, back on another wormhole, or a rabbit hole I took you down. Okay, so is everybody still with me though?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Here's one of the wonderful things that fat does, is helps us with leptin. Leptin, has anybody heard of leptin? It was only discovered in the 1990s. They've been talking about it since. It helps us produce leptin, and our bodies sense the leptin, and they say, hey, I'm full, I don't need to eat. That's a really cool thing. Anyway, fat is one of the things that helps turn our leptin on. One of the things that makes us it dulls our sensitivity to leptin is sugar. We eat a lot of sugar, we stop hearing leptin say, hey, you're full. So we always think we're hungry. You know, there's a saying that you can never use willpower to lose weight, and it is so true. If you want to lose weight, and I can promise you this, you can use willpower to a degree, but it's only going to last a couple of days. You can only do what your body will physically allow it to. And if you're eating sugar all day long, and your body's got a screwed up hormone system, you're always going to think you're hungry. Even though you're not hungry, your body will think it's really hungry if you're not getting the proper nutrients. So, back to, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, back to fats. What are some healthy fats, by the way? We talked about butter. Butter's got medium chain triglycerides. Here's what's cool. One of the ways it helps us prevent heart disease. It's got vitamin K2. Vitamin K2, nobody really talks about. They talk about K1, but vitamin K2 helps us get calcium out of our bloodstream and into our bone. Without enough K2, we can't absorb calcium into our bone. And guess where that calcium hangs out if we don't get enough vitamin K2? Where do you think it hangs out? Not in our stomach. In our arteries, that's right. And we get plaquing in our arteries. One of the ways to prevent that plaquing is getting good butter. Now when I say butter, ideally, and not ideally, really we want grass-fed butter. Butter from grass-fed cows. I know Kerrygold makes a version of it. There's another brand as well. I forget who. Do we sell Kerrygold here, by the way? Okay, we don't. Anyway, who does? Organic Valley? Okay, so Organic Valley. Anyway, you want that butter to be from grass-fed cows. On top of it, it's got medium chain fatty acids. Those help, again, they tell us that we're full, and they boost our metabolism up just a little bit. Okay? So it's very important. Then we talk about how many of you think that sunflower oil may be helpful? Okay, sunflower, wow. This is a really smart group. Yeah, we have a ratio of fatty acids, and you know what? I'd rather not get in. Would you guys be okay if I don't talk about fatty acid ratios tonight? Okay, because it starts to get a little heady. Okay, so the long and short, can everybody agree that we should be eating, that fat is okay to eat, or at least most of us can agree? Okay, cool. Very cool. You know, for breakfast, and you know, between clean meats and non-clean meats, I know some of you, and I'm not going to lie, I have bacon, which is not the cleanest of meats that are out there. But for breakfast, I have grass-fed eggs, which are tons of fat and cholesterol. I have bacon, which are lots of fat and cholesterol, and avocado, which is almost all fat. Usually my breakfast is about 80%, 98% fat, and then the rest of it's protein. Then I'll have like a salad at lunch with a whole bunch of olive oil on it. That's about 80% fat by the time you factor in the calories from the olive oil. I tend to do really well when I'm consuming usually around 60, 70% fat. And so fat's a wonderful thing, and I'm very thankful we have it. So without it, we die. All right, so here's some of the most beneficial ones. Organic virgin coconut oil, healthy saturated fat. We've got organic butter or ghee from grass-fed cows. Okay. We've also got extra virgin olive oil, organic avocados, and then wild-caught Alaskan salmon. It's expensive as heck, but I'll tell you, it is very good. Very good. And it also supplies us with omega-3s. One of the take-homes I want you to understand about eating a lot of fat is it helps keep us full. Okay, so if you're going to write anything down, write that down. Fat helps keep us full. All right? So, the next thing is drink more water. Now, before we go, how much water, let's just take a little poll. How much water do you drink a day? How many ounces would you say are cups?
Per day?
Yeah.
That's about
16 to 20 ounces of water? Okay. So like one of those little bottles?
Yeah.
Okay, so about 16 to 20 ounces. Who else?
probably drink about 5 of those.
Okay, so we're talking about 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Okay. Who else? You're with the red sugar. About 3 bottles? Okay. Well, here, how much...
About water,
how-
not anything that's got water.
Exactly. Now I say that, and yes, many people say, well, I wake up in the morning and I pour myself coffee, and then a little later I'll have myself some tea, and then, yeah, water is pure water, okay? And yeah, that is, how many of you can say you drink at least 20 ounces of water a day? Good. How many of you say you drink at least 40 ounces of water a day? Okay, good. How many of you would say you drink 8 8-ounce glasses of water a day? 64 ounces. Okay, so I'm seeing some hands. I'm smiling. Okay. How many of you would say you drink at least 80 ounces a day? Okay. Wow. Okay, great. Here, does anybody know how much we should be drinking a day? Now this is again water, not soda, not tea, not juice.
Your body weight in ounces.
Half your body weight in ounces. So, in other words, if you weigh 180 like me, just kidding. Let's say if I weigh 200 and I take half of my body weight, that's 100 pounds. That's how many ounces of water I should be drinking per day. So think about that. Everybody in your head right now, think of how much you weigh. Okay, ready? Now tell me, how much do you weigh? I'm just kidding. Now take that number and divide it in half. Okay? That's how many ounces of water you should drink per day. Now, full disclosure here, I wish I could say that I drink that much a day myself. I probably average between somewhere myself between about 70 and 90 a day. But we should be drinking about half our body weight in ounces of water per day. Now, one of the huge benefits of water is that it cleanses our liver. And our liver, if you don't know, our liver is a huge metabolism organ. It helps us get rid of junk in our body. Our liver is like filtration system. And by drinking a lot of water, it can help us filter junk through our body quicker so we can burn off the weight quicker. Okay? Another thing water does, and there's actually studies that have been done on it, that if we're hungry and we drink a cold glass of water, and I forget how many ounces, if it's just an 8-ounce glass or what, but it can do a lot of things to help curb those hunger cravings. So water helps us feel full, and it also cleanses our liver, which helps us shed that weight quicker. Okay? Are you guys starting to see how it's possible to lose 5 pounds in 7 days now? Okay. I want you to know, for most of us, it's not, unless we're exercising like all the time, which again I recommend against, that 5 pounds that we're losing is not going to all be fat, okay? But a lot of it is going to be toxins that are in our body that because we're drinking this water, our liver is going to be able to filter through and get out of our bloodstream, okay? So if we're doing this properly, about 2 of the pounds of our 5 pounds are going to be fat. About the other 3 pounds of them are going to be junk. And then after that, usually a good rate to lose weight is about 2 to 3 pounds per week. And if people can do that, you don't usually want to go much beyond that level. All right? So, drink more water. Really, we talked about all these things. The next thing is eating more non-starchy vegetables. So let's throw out some ideas. What are some good non-starchy vegetables?
Kale.
Kale? Yeah, coming out hard hitting here, I see. Spinach, broccoli, what else?
Cauliflower.
Green beans, cauliflower, yep. What else? Cabbage, squash, what else? And squash starts to get borderline between a non-starchy, or I'm sorry, a starchy vegetable. Okay, so we're what's that? You know, that would not be a green vegetable, but it would be a non-starchy vegetable. Yeah, eggplant. Okay, the long and short is there's so many vegetables that there are out there to choose from. Ideally, we want to get as many of these into our lives as we can. And for breakfast, you know, asparagus is wonderful. Broccoli with our eggs is wonderful. These things help to fill up our stomach. And you know, in a day, we need about 2,000 calories, right? Do you know how many vegetables you need to eat to get about 2,000 calories? So we said it takes about 5 Krispy Kremes to get 2,000 calories, right? Do you know how many vegetables you need to get about 2,000 calories? Like take a wheelbarrow, and I'm being serious here, take a wheelbarrow and heap up as many vegetables as you can into it. Something like that. I don't know exactly, but it takes something like that. So if it's able to do that for a wheelbarrow, it's able to do that for your body. The cool part is they really help you because they're helping to detoxify you. It helps to really suck the weight off your body. It also helps to fill our stomach and help us feel full. Okay? So again, more non-starchy vegetables. So, if you want more, and before I get into that too, I'll just tell you about the book that we've got. It's nothing huge except to let you know that we've got it. But if you want a cool food pyramid, here's a a good way to eat. We have the very bottom. Can everybody see this? If you can do this for the next 7 days, or starting Wednesday, you're going to lose your 5 pounds. And if you do the things that we talked about, the bottom of your pyramid should be non-starchy vegetables. Then you have fats. You want to eat a lot of fat. Then you want to eat some protein. And then up here, you're going to top it off with some nuts. If you want some dairy, throw in a little bit of dairy. And ideally, it would be dairy from grass-fed cows. And then you've got your starchy vegetables all the way up there on the top. So your starchy vegetable, what are some starchy vegetables?
Potato.
Yeah. What else?
Rice.
What's that?
Rice. Pasta.
Grain.
No, the pastas are grains. And that starts going in the category right along there with wheat. And yeah, they spike your blood sugar. They've got...
Couscous and
You know, couscous is one of those things, and quinoa. Those are things that are a little bit...
Couscous is rice.
Okay, it's one of those things that are... I haven't heard the worst things about them, but they're kind of one of those borderline foods, especially if there's issues with blood sugar. I know that quinoa does not affect it very much, but couscous could. And I know some rices, and especially beans, can really spike our blood sugar. Does that answer your question? I know that sounds like a politician answer. But... Okay, what other questions?
That's sweet potato stew.
Yeah, you know, that would go up here with the starchy vegetables. I love them, especially though if you are overweight and if you have a lot of blood sugar issues where you crave sugar and sugary foods, you have blood sugar issues. And if you have a lot of blood sugar issues, you want to limit your sugary foods and your sugary intake. And I'm sorry that it is that way. There's other people that don't have problems and they can eat sweet potatoes all day long. I think they're great foods. The problem is about too much of a good thing. So fruit can be too much of a good thing too. So I love fruit, but it makes a really great treat or a really great dessert. But beyond that, you want to be really careful, especially if you're like me and have an issue with blood sugar problems. And fruit can definitely spike it up, especially things like bananas and watermelon and pineapples and things like that. It can do the exact same thing table sugar does. So one should be careful. I still do eat fruit, but I try to keep it in very small quantities. Especially, I love things like berries. I'll try to keep those in small quantities. Cherries as well. Those have very small effects on our blood sugar. And so I just want to say, you know, the authors of this book, before they did this book, they had another book that was a clunker, and I hated that book. And the first time I saw this book, I was very skeptical because I was like, well, I read your last book, and I looked like that in my first picture when I was trying to eat the way they showed on their last book. And I was not very thrilled with it at all. But then I saw this book, and these were the first people that showed me that you can eat lower carb foods that are whole foods. I was so turned off by the low carb thing too because it was so unnatural and so unhealthy. And so all the foods that are in this book are whole foods, and they show you how to do them in quantities. And so if you want to, you get the book, and you can, there's great recipes in here, you know, and there are, like, if you like almond power bars, eggs Florentine, grain-free pancakes, which I love. There's mini